So Olympian and former world record holder Asafa Powell says unless things change, film pitting them now run for Jamaica, and people vex, whole heap of people vex. Lots to talk about here, folks. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Thank you so much for joining me. Time for tea. So by now, you've probably seen the video with Asafa, but let me use his exact words, all right? This is what he said. Honestly, guys, if the support system don't change, my kid's not running for Jamaica. Sorry to say that, but it's just facts. He said, my wife is Canadian and Ghanaian, so there are options. I remember back in 2006, I was offered millions of US dollars to run for another country. At the time, I turned it down because I didn't know. It was very early. I didn't know what the future held. If I knew what I know now, I would have taken up that opportunity. He says, I love my country and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's business. It's my life. It's my future if we don't have support. Money makes the world go round. Everybody wants more money every day because they want to be comfortable and live a good life. He said no athlete wants to retire and go work a 9 to 5 or go sit down struggling, wondering what's next. We all want to have a good life afterwards. Our money should work for us when we retire. If the boys, if everything don't change by the time these kids, if they're actually interested in sports, of course, and running and all that stuff. He said if everything don't change, none of them not running for free. I run for free my entire life. I run for Jamaica, just country pride and all that stuff, just to wear the colors. I run for free, nothing. I've never gotten anything from the country. So if all that don't change, these kids not running for Jamaica. So I'm curious as to what was your first reaction when you first heard that. I'm not going to lie and say I wasn't a little disappointed, but then I started to think about it. There are a couple of things I want to comment on. People's reactions to Asafa's comments, this whole idea of what Jamaica should do for athletes, and also the fact that he's speaking out, but speaking out now. Let me start with people's reactions. Not surprising to me, but still disappointing. Some of the reactions have been really vitriolic and over the top. I mean, people are cursing the man like, whoa, and I don't understand it. It's really weird for me for a couple of reasons, right? The man is talking his truth. He's sharing his thoughts about what he wants for his children's future. And that's based on his lived experiences. So I've never been on board, first of all, with the kind of nasty comments people like to direct at our athletes if they don't like what they're saying or they don't like how they're performing. And I generally think the way social media has allowed people to just aim toxic vitriol at other people is just terrible, and it's one of the huge downsides of social media. And it does affect the athletes. I mean, they talk about it, you know. And to be clear, I'm not saying that as professional athletes, they're not liable to be criticized, that we shouldn't critique them. We shouldn't talk about their performances if they're not doing well. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about the kind of personal tracing, name calling, just disgusting behavior. All right, people need to do better. But back to Asafa's comments. All of us as parents, all of us want better for our children. Based on our own lives, want our kids to do better and to have better opportunities. Everyone out. If we as parents think that the best thing for our children is for them to leave Jamaica, migrate, go somewhere else, to allow them to have a better life, we tell them to do that. And no say true, right? Because we want the best for them. We want them to be happy, want them to be comfortable or rich, and rich is nice. And if that means leaving Jamaica, so be it. Hundreds of thousands of Jamaicans have left Jamaica so their children can have a better life. Why shouldn't Asafa want better for his kids? And if he thinks better for his kids means them not running for Jamaica, as somebody who himself ran for Jamaica, who are we to tell him there's something wrong with that? Then no, he says if he knew 20 years ago what he knows now, he would have switched to run for another country that offered him millions. And people are cussing him. I actually saw one person with one everlasting cussing on social media, and then in huge letters, Infigwe. On the need for chill. Seriously. The argument seems to be that it was Jamaica who gave him his start, Jamaica who gave him that first platform so he could show his talent to the world, and that it's ridiculous for him to suggest Jamaica should have done any more for him, any more than it does for teachers, nurses, and doctors. All right, but they're migrating so fast we can't even keep up. So what's your point? Every single day there are calls for Jamaica to do better for its doctors, nurses, teachers, so we can keep them. So what's your point? All the engineers and nurses and doctors and lawyers and business people who got their schooling even up to university level in Jamaica then decided that Jamaica couldn't do enough for them, so they migrated. We didn't have strength for them. Somehow Asafa and athletes are supposed to think differently Because what? And by the way, I do think we need to do more for our athletes. Of course, doctors and teachers and firefighters and everybody, all those categories of workers are important, and we should do more for them as well and take care of them. But I strongly believe there's something special about our athletes. I think there's a magic that takes hold of this country during sporting events, an upwelling of patriotism, joy, optimism, camaraderie that's invaluable and needs to be tangibly rewarded, other than by people just knocking pot cover or holding motorcades. Athletes need to live and thrive. What we need is a proper sports policy and actual development plan. What seems to happen, as far as I can see, is that individual athletes will ball out and J3 will say they've helped them, or the government will say they've helped, but it all seems very ad hoc and welfare based and hush-hush, as opposed to being development based and transparent. The way the system now works seems very subjective. Who wants to help who, as opposed to being objective, open and transparent. Coach Glenn Mills, legendary coach of the legendary Usain Bolt, when I interviewed him last week, said we need a development fund with proper criteria for athletes to be able to access it based on how well they're doing. Not that everybody would have access. You have to have criteria. There are ideas, though, that we don't seem to have ever seriously looked at implementing. Chris Derring, for instance, made a great suggestion over 10 years ago about a special tax regime for athletes. He said our athletes have a very limited career span, which is subject to high earnings risk because of the potential of injury. Also, unlike other developed countries where a full-fledged sports industry already exists, like the USA and the UK, we generally have no revenue assurances for athletes against injuries, such as lucrative endorsements and other career extensions, for instance, sports commentary. And because of our small size, these athletes have a disproportionate impact on this country when they win or lose, which cannot be ignored. See, same thing me that talk about. He said to say simply that they should pay taxes like everybody else in Jamaica is faulty thinking and ignores the other significant benefits we all derive from their successes at home and overseas, and the bigger opportunity to develop an industry out of these formidable assets. He said the example of our tourist industry, where we created tax incentives to encourage investment and from which we now enjoy foreign exchange rewards, is a simple illustration of this point. Again, when I spoke to Glenn Mills, he said we've done a terrible job at marketing Jamaica. He said, for instance, we are the fastest woman in the world, the fastest man in the world. What kind of serious marketing did we do to attract additional revenue for Jamaica that could have gone into, for instance, this kind of development fund he was talking about? So I think the suggestion from Chris Derring, I think the point that Coach Mills has been making, those are examples of innovative thinking about how to grow sports as an industry and help our athletes financially. A few final comments on Asafa, though. Would it have been great if he had spoken out at the peak of his career? Of course. But I think we forget sometimes, how young these athletes are. Your peak career as a runner is probably in your 20s, right? Maybe early 30s. Look, when they start to really bust on the international scene, they're not long out of either high school or college, In any other industry, they'd be entry-level employees. How many young people at that age, turning activists and rocking the boat, especially when they're worried that rocking the boat might mean they miss the next boat to World Champs or Olympics. A lot of times, the kind of wisdom and introspection and vision that people are now saying Asafa should have had in his 20s, sometimes that kind of stuff comes with maturity, and life experience. I do think his comments about running for free were misleading. The truth is, Asafa was a professional athlete, an elite athlete with endorsements. He got appearance fees. He would have got prize money. There's no question of him having run for free. What he means is that Jamaica never pay millions to run. Look, I don't know the man business, so I can't comment on how much he earn or what he do with the money. I do think elite athletes need really fantastic financial and business teams to ensure that the money they earn does continue to work for them afterwards, so that, as Asafa say, them not have to go look na 9 to 5 or pass no hat or worry about how they're gonna live. The truth is also is that every single Olympics, I see stories about Olympians, even in the great US of A, who are struggling financially and have to suck salt to be able to train and to make the team. It's not something that's confined to Jamaica, certainly not as a developing country. And it's easy, for instance, you look at St. Lucia. It's easy for a country like St. Lucia to give Julia and Alfred everything because no disrespect, but as she won. It's easy for Dominica to give Thea Lafond everything because as she won. We're blessed with many amazing talents and athletes, so we have to take a slightly different approach, but we do need an approach. So for instance, I think the health insurance scheme that had been introduced for athletes is fantastic. I think that's absolutely what we need. The last time the sports minister, Olivia Babsy-Grange, spoke about it, for instance, she said athletes are now able to access unlimited psychological, psychiatric services, as well as dietitian, podiatrist, chiropractor, massage therapy, athletic therapy, and speech therapy. And she said there are other benefits: hearing aid services, renal dialysis, radiotherapy, chemotherapy, artificial limbs and other prosthetics, root canal and permanent crown, as well as support for miscarriage. I love that because, again, it speaks to some of the specific issues that our women have that we too often overlook. And she also said athletes traveling overseas are covered up to $100,000 US. So I love that. We need more of that in a coordinated and properly developed and thought through policy. So let's see what else we can do. We may not be able to do as much as Asafa wants to make Theme Picnic them run, but we have a whole heap more and we need to help them. So I have to leave it there. What you think? Drop your comments below as always. Remember, keep it civil, alright? And do like the video, share it with someone you think might be interested, and do subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Also, click the notification button so you know anytime I drop a new video. I'm Dion. Thank you so much for watching. Back to my tea.